Right.
So I'm just
There's not
kickstarting
even an answer.
this. We've got
I
to
guess
cut.
that's not true. You usually say good. Good. How are you doing?
That's right.
Mm.
Just so everybody knows, we're actually learning from each other how we say in our local vernacular, "G'day, how you going?" Or "G'day, mate, how you going?" And so we're passing it around. So let's repeat it. So Jen, how did you do it?
I say, hi, friends.
And then Josh, you picked it up.
I said, hey, how you doing? Or how you? And I will back to Pacifico.
I would say, hey, what's up? Let's go to Lucy.
I'd probably say g'day, actually, or howdy. Annika.
Hi, wie geht's?
How do
Say
you
it
say
again.
it?
Hi, wie geht's? That would be German.
Hi, we
Yeah,
get
wie geht's? Yeah.
And I pass it on to Gabriel.
E aí, tudo certo?
uh,
É isso, nosso.
yeah.
That's what we say. It's the same that like, hey, how are you doing? It's the base. And let me see. Andrea, please.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Nice.
And I'll pass it to Pip.
Yeah, if I'm feeling I want to be young and cool, I'll go, hey, how you going? But if I want to be me, I go, hi, how you going?
So cute.
So
I'll pass it on to whoever else hasn't gone. David.
Guys say, if I'm honest, I just say, hey, how's it going? That's pretty boring, but that's how I say it.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. Anyway, so in keeping with tradition, um, sit back and enjoy this piece of music. It's quite amazing.
Robert, I really want to interrupt you. I apologize, but just on this exact note, last week you started us off and you said in your accent, just to get us into the right spice. And I thought, oh, spice. Yeah, that's what we're getting into. And then later you said space. I thought, dang it. Anyway, thanks.
Well, thanks for the yeah, we've got to get it right, haven't we? Oh dear. Okay, so this is this is to get us into the zone for the final
No, the
conversation,
spice, the spice.
the space that Annika is going to host for us.
Robert, we cannot hear it unless something's wrong with my
It's coming. It's coming.
okay, sorry.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mm. I think someone once said to me that great leaders are like conductors. They don't say anything. They just have the voices of others sing in harmony. Mm. Well, Annika, what are you going?
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to our last session of this course. This session is going to be a bit different as we wrap up and want to have large space to communicate in the big group, to exchange, to see what have we all learned, what do we take with us, and what are we going to do with all what we take with us. Yeah, and in keeping with the tradition now, I will give a quick visual overview where we stand and what we have done in order to then get into the discussion. So, Robert, would you be so kind to share? Yeah. So we started off. Can everybody see? Not yet. No. Great. Yeah. So we started off our first session with a question: what is leadership and how am I a leader? And focused on power with as opposed to power over, and that leadership is rather a behavior than a position. And then we went into prosocial conversations, so into active listening, and practice this to reflect back. And in the third session, we took a deep dive into prosocial conversation and what makes a conversation purposeful, and how do we authentically and openly listen to others. And in the fourth session, was the point where we moved from the individual to the collective. This was an introduction of psychological adaptability, and the matrix. So that was so to say the transition point to the more collective sessions, the last two. So in that fifth session, we had then the shared purpose and identity. And in the sixth session, we talked about CDPs, and yeah, this was this session, and the cooperation part and decision making part was the last session we had together. And now we sort of wrap up everything. So that just to give a quick overview where we stand and what we have done so far. Yeah, and now I would like to open up. First, if there are any open questions, what would you like to know? What is maybe unclear? And maybe also some feedback we would like to share. That would be great if there are questions at all. Maybe everything is totally clear.
One thought that I have, I think the last three classes like when it really started being like moving with people in groups was where like I had the most growth edge and I also struggled the most and I also just life stuff getting in the way. So it's hard to fully attend to the homework and everything else like that. Um, and I feel like when it comes to like how to develop consensus or consent around what actions we should try and then start that cycle from there of like, let's just see what works. Let's decide
Mhm.
something as best possible. That makes sense to me. But one of the struggles that I have right now is like when we talk about using the personal noticing tool, I think it's really easy to think about what's most important to me. That's easy, straightforward, right? Like in a given context, I can be like, yeah, this is what matters most, right? And then the actions that flow from that and all of that, the adaptive bridge. But when it comes to like group and what matters for the group and finding that shared purpose, I think that's where I have a lot of practical thoughts and I get in my head and maybe I just missed this. And I don't know if other people are there as well, but like thinking about if I'm forming a group or if I already have an existing group, right? If I have like, I don't know, a business that I'm working with, it would make sense to just talk to everyone's part of this group. What are your values? Kind of put them in the pot. And then is it just finding out what's shared? And what if you have like 30 different values for 30 different people about what's most important in that. And then like, ooh, like, can there be shared identity if everyone's bringing very different things? And then the other thought that I have is like, if I'm forming a group, right? Like around what, right? And if it's like, I think ideally like that shared purpose and values that goes to the core, right? There's a lot there. But then it's like, do I say this is the shared purpose and values, and if this is your shared purpose and values, like you'll probably resonate with this and come? Or is it more like I want to start this group and then we're going to try to figure it out together of what we're really about, right? And I don't know, I'm just thinking through different practical groups that I've been a part of and other groups that I've even talked to about maybe doing this down the future and next certification stuff. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. Some of them are already existing, some of them are forming. And I know some of the people in the groups, and it's like they care about some very different things, right? And like, yeah, they coalesce on some shared things, and maybe it's like, okay, that's the group's values is where there's convergence. But I'm thinking of like,
Mhm.
I don't know, my neighborhood, right? I've got people all over the community, and if I'm trying to do something with my community, where do I go, especially if there's a lot of diversity. If I have, a Somali refugee next door, and then like a hard right conservative over here that wants to, purge the nation of people, right, that are not natural born citizens or whatever, right? When I have those very disparate, not a lot of common ground, how do I work here, right? And I know I just said a lot. It's just something I'm wrestling through of like, how do we get to that shared purpose and values and converging on shared purpose if there is a lot of dissimilarity in the people that we're working with, or there's not a clear touchstone. Um,
Mm, okay. Andrea.
Yes, I actually just did something like this on Saturday, so it's very fresh in my mind. And I'd like to, you know, share what I did for the values part. And it was basically, I had a group of 11 college students, and we're working on a project. So I divided them into three different groups, and I asked them to think about the different values that the group had and choose three values. And so I had three groups and they all came up with three values. And a lot of those values were the same. Like actually two of them we could just choose right away. And then there were about three or four other values. And I gave everyone a little red dot, like a sticky little red dot. And then I asked them to go to the boards and just put a dot to whatever value they thought should be the next one. So then that's how we chose the next one, and that's how we got our three values. But some of them were very similar, so that's something that you also have to take into account. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was yeah, commitment and responsibility. So when they came up with those values, it's like, wait a second, those are very similar values. So that way we kind of like decided that we can merge those two. And then we voted on the other. There were like, I don't know, like three or four more. And so that's how we did it. And it was very effective.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Pacifica was just talking about because I've had the same experience over the last few weeks in the group sections, especially, and I'm not sure if this is a result of stuff we're all going through, what we're learning, but this is very interesting to me also on a personal level because I've been working on these sorts of issues for the last 6 years or so. I've been developing collective intelligence protocols from a computer science point of view. So I look at a lot of these things from a much more exterior kind of view than Prosocial does, which is more experiential. And you know, I look at the things that we've been doing as exploring different types of technologies, different psychotechnologies in a way. So there's different ways of making a good decision when you're in a group. Certain types of decision making will be better for answering certain questions. And I feel like we're at a kind of a primitive stage still with developing these technologies, and we don't have good answers for um, some questions that you brought up, Pacifico, or other questions that can be brought up, other scenarios where a failure mode can show itself. So, for instance, do we know how to handle the case where somebody brings something up at the last minute in a meeting where that would derail everything? Do we have technologies that will guide us into a more productive kind of decision making? I think that a lot of these questions are best answered from the point of view of incentive design and system design. And I think that prosocial, it's I can't fault prosocial. Anything I've learned here is everything has been very enlightening and the interactions have been wonderful. But I think that as a species, we're going to have to learn how to integrate the exterior view with the interior and to have smarter systems that will guide us through these kinds of processes in a more foolproof way. So that's all I have to say.
Mm. Yeah.
Love that.
I'd like to address Pacifico again because I don't know if your question is answered so far.
I don't know. I think part of it is I just need to sit with this stuff more and review those
Yeah.
lessons and maybe practice it in groups. And
Yeah,
I
I
feel
have.
like there's like the overviews, there's good strategies, there's like the dot voting, the asking the deeper
Mm,
questions, clarifying needs and values. I think that like those techniques are very helpful. And I think maybe where I get stuck is what if you have 20 people and there's not a consensus? And then is it like, okay, well, this is a split into two groups because this groups want this groups to be about this group wants it to be about that, right? Or three groups or four groups or, stuff like
yeah.
that.
And there, consent-based decision making can really help because you go for the larger for larger possible conversions. So what are you okay with? So in opposed to, oh, this is what we want. So you don't go for the preference, but what are you still okay with to go with? And another bit I would like to add is in my experience, it's helpful to ask, is that actually a group that identifies as a group, or is it a group that is like a neighborhood defined by a certain circumstances, like that they all live in the same area, but they don't identify. So that might be that they come together, and then if you orient this group towards a target, then they might be a group, but not necessarily for a long time. Depends what binds them together. So that might be helpful to explore, and really, in order to orient a group towards something, it's really helpful, as you said, to go to the interests and common values. So ask what lies behind that, and what can we converge on? Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Good. Lucy.
Thank you. I've got a couple of reflections stemming from what Pacifico has been pondering, but I just wanted to check. What's the question that you're keen for us to respond to at this point? Because I wasn't sure if we were starting with sort of high level questions about the course, or are you interested in that we're ready to move towards this deep dive of reflections about how we apply, or questions about how we apply?
No, it's just if you have questions over the course, anything that is still open for you, not answered, where you have like, it's not really clear yet.
Cool. Yeah, great. Thank you. So yeah, probably similar to what Pacifico has said. And first of all, David, I just love how you bring your IT design thinking into the languaging and how you understand this work and the words you use. Like, it's just fascinating to me to have that totally different background and training in the space. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I have been finding myself wondering, I guess probably I've been approaching this in my brain as somebody who wants to train to lead and coach in this method. And so I'm assuming to a degree that you've got a fairly ready audience, that you've been invited into a context where people are ready to have these conversations. But I have a few questions kind of backtracking from that. One is, and Pacifico's example is a perfect one. How do you work with people where there's not an opening or an invitation to bring this to them, or there's not even an expressed intention to align on values or align on purpose or come together in any overt way, and there may not be trust around somebody coming in and facilitating that process for a group. So that's one question I have. And then I guess I, off the back of that, wanted to reflect on I shared a presentation on Tuesday into an international prosocial health network that we're part of, and Robert leads and Annika joined, and I found both your and Robert's reflections after that my presentation back through the frame and the lens that we've been learning gave me an example of exactly how that could work, so that no matter what situation you're in, there's always a way to frame it or see it or understand it through this lens, even if you're not overtly showing that to people in the space. If there's a sense that they're not ready or that you've not been invited in from that perspective. But that remains a lingering point for me, possibly even from a business development opportunity, or even just with my own team. Like, they're such a busy team, and we've just had our big strategy day, which was led by another facilitator. And I would love to bring this work to them, but I can't even imagine making the case for them to take another full day out of work to go through this process in a deep dive kind of way. So I'm looking and wondering about ways that I can bring it in subtly in team meetings or in one-on-one interactions with my team or things like that. I'd love to hear other people's experience around how you've integrated it in less formulaic environments. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I am doing this in my hospital, and this is not a place where people are used to such processes, not at all. And I use it combined with Mickey's work and the Harvard negotiation method, which is very close to that, and have it like in my head and analyze things through that lens and ask questions, and know, okay, where am I in the matrix without doing it overtly. So I covertly lead them through questions that really help. And I also notice one thing I have always in mind is, on which side of the matrix are we? Are we on the left side or are we on the right side? And if I notice we are on the left side, either I go and see what's the pain point, what's hurting, go there and look for the need. And if I think somebody is focusing too much there, I have some people in a group, people in a group who do that as a habit. I shift them looking to the openings because this is where we want to go. And to have this other thing in mind, this is what I do. I don't know. How do you do that, Robert? I mean, you have tremendous experience.
I'm happy to chime in. I'd love to give Pip and Andrea an opportunity to speak because I mean I love this thread at the conversation. And yeah, so let's hear from Pip and Andrea, and then I'd love to actually provide my reflection. Yeah, thanks for kickstarting this, Pacifico. You've opened up. This is where the rubber hits the road, I think. It's really, yeah.
Okay, well, I might go. I just want to check with Pacifico. Am I hearing you that you're wondering how to, get a group to converge, or when you
I'm not
already
even
know
sure where
there's
I'm lost.
diverse?
I'm just lost.
Oh, okay. Well, I might put my hand down then because I don't want to say something that doesn't address a question. But do you have a question at this point, Pacifico?
I feel like I'm the first three parts of this, because I do ACT and I'm a therapist, it was just like old hat. Like I can teach the ACT matrix, and like I'm very glad to learn it this way and try to be open and be a new learner, right? And just be a child's mind with some of this stuff as best I can. And then the last three was like some of it was like, yeah, this makes sense. I have some ideas about how to work towards consensus and examples of when it fails. And I think it's around this like shared vision, gathering vision. I see some of the techniques and I also struggle with like there are some groups where it's like you're just in the group and uh I'm thinking of people I know that are on school boards right now. And school boards here, at least in our context, are very divided and acrimonious, and they're not pro-social, right? At least the ones that I'm aware of and how they're functioning. And you have people with very different agendas, very different strong beliefs, very different values, very different ways to express those values. And it's like, how would you get to a shared identity?
Yeah.
And then my mind goes to, well, some of my friends would be like, oh, that's fine. Let the group split. There's different groups. People who are more convergent on these values are over here. More people are more convergent on these values over here. And yeah, there's just a lot of fishiness, and I think it just needs time to settle. But that's just something I'm wrestling through.
Mhm. I might respond just briefly because your question's very broad. I do have a suggestion for something that can be done with very divergent groups, no matter, because it's actually just a kind of precursor to any of the things we've raised in Prosocial on this course, and that is it really quite helpful sometimes just to have what's called a listening circle. That just means you sit in a circle. You might have some ground rules, but the most important one is that it's no response. So everybody gets a chance it's timed, usually 2 minutes, whatever, depending on the size of the group. And you just get to air the views in the room. But it's a bit more magic than just hearing the views in the room. It's that this view can actually influence someone else. And so you can do another round and things are already starting to converge a little bit. It's quite magic and it's quite easy to facilitate. That's just my thought. Yeah.
Andrea.
Yeah. So going back to Lucy's question about how to share this with your team, a few things come up for me. First of all, I've come to realize that when people are interested in something, they make the time. So sometimes we assume people are going to say, no, I have no time or something like that. And we're pleasantly surprised to ask and find out that maybe we're wrong. And something else that came up was sometimes if you ask for like a whole day, it might be too much to ask for. But if you ask for little chunks of time and just kind of do a little bit at a time, it works very well. I'm actually teaching a prosocial course in the university that I'm part of, and within 4 days I had 25 directors and 2 VPs, and these are extremely busy people. So yeah, you gotta ask and then see what happens, and then again, little bits of time can be a lot easier. And people actually, I find that they learn better like that. They just learn little by little or they share little by little. So those are my 2 suggestions.
Gosh.
I guess general reflection, but also just what's kind of responding to Pacifico and Lucy. Because initially, I mean, a lot of what everyone's saying right now in talking about that is focusing on that shared identity and vision. But for me, that word purpose is also the key there of goals. Like that's really where, if for what I've been also, and then to some extent for what Lucy's saying, like how I'm trying to work this in already just in my day-to-day at work, it's been just as like as these things sink in and I'm embodying it, like it's affecting my communication style. And I see how that is, people are responding to that. And if I see any interest whatsoever, like Andrea said, I tell them, oh, I'm taking a course, you should read this book. But that other piece of if I'm having a hard time figuring out, even in like also to what Pacifico said, like I want to understand how I can bring my neighbors together in a diverse situation. And if that's like that goal of something as mundane as trash pickup problems or whatever that might be, you know, whether it's those, it's a physical thing, and then whether you can get metaphysical and very physical about it, which for me is a children's book. If anyone knows it, Everyone Poops. It's one of my favorite children's books, and it's pretty much what you can think there, but taken out across animals and humans. And that to me always like anytime everyone is like common denominator here, we're human, and that piece like I don't know. That's how I'm trying to find that connection sometimes when you're dealing with somebody who you know is nowhere near your state of mind. Like you've got to eat, you've got to share that. Maybe there's a connection point that, yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, thank you. So at this point, I'd like to shift it to Robert.
Yeah,
Exactly. Who is gonna tell us something about Prosocial in general and about the certification process, and then we will get into a deeper dive where we at.
yeah, thank I mean, thanks for the discussion just now. For me, what we're touching on is, I guess that we're pointing at the radical nature of this work, you know, and I guess how much can you introduce in a short course like this? I mean, I think each of the sessions, if you haven't been introduced to any of it before, they just barely open the crack in the door. You know, I mean, some of us are trained in as ACT therapists, others aren't. And so we kind of get that. But you know, this for me, learning to be professionally unsure is really important. You know, I love the way in which you're asking the question, Pacifico, you know, and you're wanting to sit with it. But for me, I found it really useful to say, okay, rather than being overwhelmed by a situation where you're really at the edge of your capacity to respond, you know, there's nothing in your learning history that's prepared you for this, is to actually find that quiet place and remain, like you said, you know, the mind of a beginner. You know, to be really present to it. And I think all of us would agree this is really complex work. And I reckon, David, as you're indicating too, we're at a primitive stage of this. You know, that we're not functioning well as a species, are we? And you know, I mean, I use the word the radical nature of this work. It's not as if we actually know what the root cause is either. For me, what we're touching on here in prosocial is It's just opening the door to actually find our way to that. And I also believe we've got a way to go. And but some of the distinctions I've found really useful are we've touched on. I think for values, what people value to come to life, it needs a home called purpose. But then to appreciate what do we understand value to be? And we can frame them up as these reified qualities. I value learning or connection or something. Whereas for me, and this is deferring to an ACT definition of it, it's actually a quality of lived experience. When you're living a rich and vital life, that is when things are of value. And so while we can name them, as kind of generalized traits, within a group, the thing that I listen for is where is their vitality? It's like Andrew saying, or someone was saying, what do you care about? Where there's interest. I think Josh, you're pointing to it, they show up. But also when people are defensive, yes, Pacifico, you're pointing to fractionated groups, who are just defending their own agenda or their own patch. And so how do we change cultures from ones of telling to listening? Because if people are actually defending their camp, that means they care about something. And this is the professionally unsure. What is the value that they want to experience that's within the context of their agenda? And what's the need that they're striving to meet? If we accept that there are universal needs that all strategies are attempting to meet. It's just that if one person's strategies are clashing with another, they're not sensitive to the needs of those that they're upsetting. And so to me, this work is about shifting cultures from telling to cultures of listening, but a quality of listening that is very rare. The needs of the living of life within the context of your sphere of influence, and be sensitive enough to be able to actually do something. Take some kind of compassionate action to meet those needs. But I guess the other thing for me too is to know what is yours to do. I've been in situations where, I might as well have bashed my head against a brick wall as try to change things, within different contexts. So I think that's another thing, is to know when there is convergence on interest and a preparedness to actually try new things. I really think it's Pip's expertise on converging on possible actions that take into account the needs and interests of outliers, the naysayers in the camp, is a really critical skill in this. But to embrace that as a participatory learning process. Now, I always invite those I'm working with to forever remain a learner. Just keep that beginner's art, because we haven't got a magic wand here. We've got some bare inklings into the what can be tried. And I guess the lovely thing about it is that these it's been tried and tested a number of times, so they're pretty good inklings. But it's yeah, love the conversation. And I think I'm loving the unsureness about it. And my invitation is to just own that, because we're all unsure. But there's another part at the heart of that. There is something we really know. And that is what we care about. And we're free to choose that, So it all adds up to a quality of presence. If you can be present in that way, then you're free, I think. Jen.
Thanks. I don't know how to raise my virtual hand. I'm just raising my regular hand. I heard an assumption, Robert, about that you were saying about how everybody, now I'm paraphrasing because it was a while back, but how everybody's intention is basically to we can find each person's intention and find everyone in common. I'm super interested in PTSD, and that really comes up here. Is that so often people are in a PTSD flashback? I think PTSD is very common, and I think that when people are flipping out and you can't quite figure out why they're flipping out, that's usually a PTSD flashback where they were triggered by something, and then emotionally they think that they're in that threatening situation, and I feel like that is a huge obstacle for all of us to overcome, is that we're trying to see someone rationally, like I'm in a rational place and I think you're in a rational place and let's find each other here. But they're not. And so often in a PTSD flashback, they don't want to connect. That's very threatening. And so I feel like that's a huge element that should come in here, is that if in this safe space, we're all being pro-social, we're all being calm, we're all knowing what the system is. But if we're working with someone who doesn't know the system and they're struggling with PTSD, which again I think is very common, that I think then those reactions, like they're like, why are you messing with me? Why are you saying this stuff? Right? And so I feel like we have to at least have in our mind a compassion that people may not be able to connect with us in a rational place. And
Yeah.
I, I
Yeah.
think that's huge.
Huge. Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe it's kind of a closing point before I start talking about what Annika's invited me to speak about. I mean, we touched on this in another conversation, Jen, and I think everyone is suffering from a history of trauma, and the experience of powerlessness within particular contexts. And there's nothing in our repertoire to actually deal with it. And some of the trauma we face is just atrocious. So no wonder we're triggered. We get into a situation and it's just a proxy for our history. And it just boom, there it is. And what you've just reminded me of is something that Lucy and I touched on in some conferences last year, radical compassion. So this is a behavioral concept. And I love it because it speaks straight to what you're talking about. And so, first of all, for you actually to be able to respond with radical compassion, you need to have empathy. And there's two facets to empathy, and this is the listening bit of it. So you need to actually be able to appreciate the perspective of another, but also how they feel about it. And you need to be very mature in order to be able to receive that for what it is. If someone is in the middle of some kind of PTSD flashback, because you've got to hold the pain of another without it overwhelming you. And so this is the work that therapists do, to be able to actually be in the presence of really, the pain of another, or even the abhorrent behaviors of another, without overwhelm. So that's the first thing, your own quality of presence and sensitivity to it. So you can hold it and feel it all really well for what it is, and still be free to choose to respond compassionately. But then if you are capable, then there are four facets to the response. The first one is that your response is freely given. It's not loaded, it's not transactional. Like if I'm going to do this for you, then I'm expecting you to change behavior or something. So it is purely given for the sake of it's out of love. The second thing is it is persistently positively reinforcing. So it means that you have to actually have a keen eye for what it is that the person is already doing that is enhancing their own well-being. And I've talked many times about how we're just in cultures of learned hopelessness, where we are so constantly told about what we're not doing. And we just wonder, well, how do I actually fit in around here? And so we need to flip that on its head and just tell people what it is we love about what they're doing already, on steroids, I think. The third facet of it is that it needs to be given with assent. So that's an ongoing recognition that the person is willing to receive your help. The moment they don't want you to be intervening anymore, you're prepared to say, okay, I'm not going to push you around. But that kind of contrasts with the last facet, which is all about the protective use of force. If the behaviors are actually exposing yourself or others to danger, it's actually acting against assent in order to preserve life. And so to be able to actually respond with that quality of compassion those facets is incredibly, it's a lifetime of work, even if you begin to master it, I think. But then to cultivate that quality of presence amongst individuals, to me, is the essence of actually stepping into the realm you're talking about, Pacifico. Unless we can be present to each other in a context where we actually have to act, where our actions implicate another, then we need to be sensitive to their needs. And our part needs to be conducted with compassion and to be open to when, so this is really, really complex work, and I love the invitation that Prosocial is inviting us to take on. The wisdom of Ostrom, and the behavioral sciences and et cetera, and all those others that are contributing to it. Convergent facilitation. To me, they're a powerful set of lenses and tools that open the door to an incredibly rich learning journey, So I reckon Jen, we keep asking powerful questions and put our arms around each other's shoulders as we take the journey, because we've got a lot to learn. Anyway, that's a segue into what Annika asked me to talk about. I wanted to just spend a few moments talking about the competency framework. So I'm going to share another slide and kind of speak to this. I think you've all seen this, a version of it. And this is, thanks to the kind of wisdom of Paul Atkins, really. He's one of the most extraordinary instructional designers that I've ever met. So this whole suite of courses actually emerged over the last 12, 18 months. 18 months more like it. And what's wrapped around this is this competency framework. And you'll see these certification levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so I want to give you a really quick snapshot. So there's this introduction to Prosocial, which is 6-session self-paced course. So this is about to go live over the next month or so, I think. And so that'll be a simplified version of what you've been able to do on Learn Worlds that people can actually take themselves through. And that sets the scene for people to actually join the course that we've just engaged in. And this is where we actually practice together and join as a community to consider this suite of capabilities that are introduced. But then once you've done this, you'll become certified as a becoming Prosocial graduate. And here, the whole competency framework is unpacked in terms of head, heart, and hand. What you understand, how you've matured emotionally, but also your capacity to be able to act in relation to what's introduced. So here it's much more about understanding experientially the core ideas and values of Prosocial. So that's level 1. And as from today, you'll be invited to join a community of practice. So over the next few weeks, you'll receive an invite. And this is a community where there's case clinics and self-organizing groups are emerging to actually take themselves on their little micro-learning journeys, and stuff like that's emerging. But this sets you up to be able to do the leading Prosocial course, which is actually centered around the same 6 modules that are in this course. But those who join the course are invited to actually facilitate one of the sessions and to be peer reviewed by the other participants on the course. And once you've done that, you're then certified as a leading Prosocial graduate. And this is about designing and implementing Prosocial with groups that you care about. This then prepares you to become a coach, to coach in PAL. So the Prosocial Action Lab, this is something that I'm very much sort of a custodian of the space of with Susan Soleil. So this is a program for intact groups who can actually apply to do the program. And those who have trained to become facilitators actually pair up in groups of 2 or 3 to coach groups. So the last PAL program we had last year had I think 11 groups. It was in 4 languages. I don't know how many countries around the world. We had about 15 coaches on it. And so this is an ongoing kind of peer support learning. And once you've done this, that's when you're certified as a Prosocial Action Lab coach. And here you practice, deepen, and expand your prosocial facilitation skills by learning from mentors and peers. So there's lots of peer support amongst the coaches on this journey. And then after that, the assumption is that people will do field work and people are invited to write a reflective essay or capture a participatory video or something on a facilitated case study. And then that leads to certification level 4, a prosocial world facilitator. And there's public recognition of your competence and receive referrals. You lead prosocial world community activities, but also can actually join the team of facilitators. So this is level 5, partner facilitator, deliver prosocial world courses as Annika is actually doing. Pip will be doing the next one. Andrea's doing it in Mexico. And so these, even though Annika and Pip haven't formally been this whole process, is because this is actually just coming online now. They have experienced facilitators, so they're actually jumped the queue a little bit, in facilitating the programs. But we wanted to introduce you to this to give you a sense of what else is going on in this camp and what else is available to you. So in coming weeks, you can expect a follow-up email, inviting you to join the community. Also, there's an online platform called Hilo that we're currently using where these groups are forming. So there you go. Annika, you're back on, I think.
Okay. So I guess this is pretty clear. And if not, interrupt me right now. And now, in keeping with the spice, I would like to invite you to cook a meal together. So, and I know we have a few people here who really like to cook with others together. I remember Josh, you're one of them. And so the meal consists of what you take with you, what you've learned here. So remember how you started and how you're now and how this journey might have changed you. This is one part of the dish, and the other part is what you want to do with it in the future. And yeah, so we have 9, 10 dishes, and I will start, and then I share my dish, and I will pass it on. So my dishes, my learning journey was focused on facilitating this course and being together on the journey with you, and maturing in to share power and to lead from a vulnerable point. And this is something I have the feeling I really grew, and I like every time I go over the material again, it's more like my own. And what I'm going to do with it is apply it in the context I am in, mainly in order to change cultures. This is what I'm up to. and also to further help other people to get on this journey and to accompany them and to foster a power with model of leadership. This is very dear to me. Yeah. And I pass it on to Gabriel.
Thank you, Annika. Thank you for sharing too. So I think from the beginning to now, it's funny because I thought that I would learn a lot more about like groups, and I figured out that when I saw like the path, I figured out like, yeah, that's the thing. Like I had to understand better what was my style of like leadership and how I recognize like as a leader and what was important for me. And I think I finished like this course if like this understand of myself like a little better. And I really feel that I am confident to apply it to I had like to do like a list of different groups and decide, okay, this one I should start first. Because I understood that like I really want to be like present like this, as not as like a position as you said many times, but as like as a behavior. And I feel that I am now start like to becoming a prosocial person. I feel that that's how I feel now. And I am really excited to apply it to as I say, like to many groups that I feel that they have things to earn from it and they have like the openness to it. But also I think something that we were talking about, like groups that they don't have like this function together already. I I understood that almost like it's as simple as like a behavior. One day I say to Robert, like it's like behavior analysis. Like it's so simple that it's sometimes like it's tricky because it's simple, but you can apply to many things and it starts to be like complex. And and in this coming and going, sometimes you get confused. But I feel that like in these groups that I don't have convergence already, I feel that like I feel more comfortable to apply it like sporadically and more in an easy way and in adaptability like meaning. That's how I see myself and applying it like going through the courses. And I really excited to like to share with you like everything that I taught and also like to share my work with you to because it was really important to me like to be part of like this group. But that's it. And I really hope to like to apply it like formally in other groups and informally in others. That's how I see myself. I will have to leave for a minute, but I will come back, guys.
And you have to pass it on before, because
And I
otherwise.
pass it on. Okay. To Jam. I will pass to her. But thank
Two
you.
words.
We'll come back.
2 words. 2 minutes? Do I get a timer? Well, I have a lot more confidence after this. Largely, it came really early of just meeting all of you and all of you having the same concept of what could be was so comforting for me because I've been very alone in that way that I do things. It's also given me a lot of confidence of how to interact, how to bring myself into a bigger place, work-wise, like how to act globally, maybe. I've always struggled with interacting with people successfully. PTSD flashbacks, anyone? And so this gave me a really good structure for how to do that safely without worrying about, well, will I go off the rails or, if something happens or whatever. And also the slowness and the calmness. So I have so much more confidence about finding people like you guys who have the same mindset. I don't feel like I mean, I kind of came up with it on my own as a conclusion, but I hope that I wasn't the only one. And so that confidence, and then to reach out and to be able to reach out with people and in a way that I feel like I'll probably be more likely to stay on the rails with them, stay connected is exciting. So. But I need so much more. Like, I feel like as I was going through this course, like the studying, I would take so long to study because like every sentence I'd write it down and I'd think about it for a while. And finally I was like, okay, I just need to take the course again. It's just, I really want more practice with it. So anyway. Okay, that was 2 words in 12 seconds. Passing it on to Lucy, please.
Thanks, Jen. Gosh, where to start? I'm noticing that I'm actually having quite a lot of deep stuff rippling right now, actually, from just even this last conversation, which I'm feeling quite emotional about. And I don't actually know why, but I think one thing that Robert just said about the sitting in the discomfort and the conflict zone, I've realized that that's a really uncomfortable space for me. And I'm having some reflections on my early parenting, in fact, where I could have done with these tools and perspectives. Sitting with other people's pain and not going into the overwhelm. So, and then on the flip side, I noticed myself just yesterday driving, and I was behind a big pickup truck with the big kind of guns and fishing gear, and the sort of kind of, in my mind, the judgment would be that that's somebody who probably has different politics to me, different understanding of people and planet. And I found myself, without even thinking, having this really loving response as I drove up to this car. I was like, wow, there's somebody who loves the outdoors, and how beautiful that people invest in taking time to equip themselves to be safe in nature. And then I just kind of noticed myself and went, far out. Normally I would have been in huge judgment as I drove up behind that vehicle, and totally all based on assumptions and story. And then I caught myself a little bit further along the road. I had to return a call from a friend who had called me, and she's an old school friend, and we're not at all values aligned. And I have found her very triggering increasingly to be around as my kind of heart opens. And then I just left this really genuinely super loving message for her from a place of deep love and care and respect. And I was like, wow, where did that come from? so it's just obviously integrating in really beautiful, powerful ways. So I guess what does that mean for me on my journey? Sorry, I'm not doing 2 words at all. Apologies. I think I just needed to get that off my chest. There's a lot more for me to learn around the power with versus power over leadership style, and also to stand in my power, like with confidence. I think I've also become very much more acquainted with the dark side of my perfectionist nature. And I feel really compelled by this work and its purpose. And I really want to stand in and step from this place. Yeah, so I'm on the journey. I'm signing up for the whole thing, and I'll see you at the next round. There's lots more I could say, but that'll do.
Thank you.
I'll pass to Josh.
Thanks for that, Lucy. I took this course to be a better human. Like, I read the books I've said many times, like, so many things resonated for me in this view of life, and just it all made sense on various levels, and I wanted to know more, and now I do, and it is all kind of hit chords that I'd hoped. So the harmonies are great, and it's really sticking for me, especially as Gabrielle said, you have to start with yourself and understand your framework, and the the specifics of process and the frameworks. Again, those are like the concrete elements that I wanted to understand, and they're just fitting into my brain because I feel like I was ready for it. And that's why, again, like for me, just in my regular work interactions, or even Andrea sharing about her using this with her family, like those frameworks all fit, and you just use it all the time and it just sinks in deeper. And yeah, I think it's I hope to use it every day wherever relevant. And for me, I'm trying to sink into that bigger picture too. I feel like I have some skills as a facilitator and a problem solver. And so for me, it's still understanding whether the keeping going makes sense, but I've already gained a tremendous amount. So thank you all again. I'll pass it to Pacifico.
I really appreciate hearing everyone. I want to answer this maybe in a different way. Have I shared my Vietnam veteran story here? Okay, I'm going to share this brief story, and then I'm going to explain why it relates to this question of what's changed, like kind of what we got from this. I used to work at the VA here in Maine, and I was in a group with Vietnam veteran people from, a generation beyond me, very different context. I didn't really understand them. They didn't really understand this, Filipino person from California at all. Very different life context. And there was one moment in the group where they started getting on this tirade about student loan forgiveness and how it shouldn't be forgiven, and how if you take a loan, you should pay it back, and how it's all unfair. And I could notice in me the defensiveness arising as someone who has like $200,000 in student loans that took on those loans to provide services for these men. And I could feel that anger and the defensiveness and the shutting down and the F these guys, right? And how they're so stupid. They've just been watching Fox News. I could feel those. But obviously I'm a therapist, so I'm not going to say that. And I just did the opposite, did opposite action. I just explored it. And I was like, well, what's really important behind that? I directly asked, like, what's the value? What's really important about this that these people pay loans back? And it was fairness. And it was kind of what I recognize now as a ladder up move. And I went one ladder up so that I could connect with them of like, yeah, I care about fairness too. And I could feel a shift and an openness. And then it created this kind of floodgate moment of course, these men really care about fairness. These men who were drafted into a war they didn't want to go into, who did horrible things, who survived all kinds of horrible stuff. And of course, now they see a couple generations later, the same government giving people free money. Of course, that strikes this huge fairness thing for them. And of course, they're angry about it. And this is not just them watching Fox News, right? This is much deeper than that. And there was just this blossoming of compassion that I had for these men. And I understood them in a very different way from that point on. Not just these, oh, yeah, these are the old cranky vets, right? That are just mad. It was a very different experience. And by the end of my time in that 3-month rotation, I mean, they were shaking my hand, calling me an honest man, giving me a challenge coins and all this other stuff. And there was a lot of affinity between me and them. And I think part of what this course like helped me understand is why that was such a powerful interaction for me. And I'm trained as a therapist. I listen to people for a job, but I often listen from the perspective of let me hear so I know the right skill to deploy to help them make progress like it's in this very like I guess goal oriented thing. And just this idea even of groups of like, well, if I can listen well and deploy the right skill, I can make this group more pro-social, as opposed to if I listen in the right way, it might change me and it might change how I relate to the group, and it might produce some changes in here that allow me to flow in a power with way and not an old power over way that I'm used to. And I came here knowing the CD core design principles and been like, how do I do this? This is great. I totally believe in this. Totally. I drank the Kool-Aid. Show me how to do it. And yeah, I've gotten some practical tools to do that, but I think that was like one of the most important things of just like this, that's why that was so important, like for me and how I related to them. And can happen in all kinds of ways, right? Where I'm going with that in the future, I would like to continue with the cohorts and see Lucy and hang out with y'all and learn more and have y'all be my rabbis on this. I don't know about timing and funding and all that stuff, but I also already have a couple local groups that are interested And I've been like soft pitching, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This might be really cool. Do you want me to like, work with you on this? Is this something you'd be open for? So I'd love to do that of helping some local groups like Jewish Voice for Peace, Southern Maine Workers Center, some regional places with people that I care about to be more effective, more pro-social, more cooperative. Because they've been asking a lot of these questions. They've been trying to reach for this stuff, but it's kind of a, you know, disorganized, kind of like just like they don't have a holistic vision for like a lot of this stuff. And I think it'd be helpful. So that's what I have to share. David, you next.
Yeah, thanks. That's good.
Yep, yes, I am. Yeah, it's there. I feel like I want to say two very different things. And squeeze them both into the same message. So one way I'm going to be applying Prosocial is what I was referring to earlier about technology and finding ways of doing Prosocial processes better and making it more inevitable that prosocial practices value are understood, and that involves reducing, I guess, the amount of initial work or energy is required to practice something like this. So a lot of times that has to do with how difficult an interface is to use, or how, or it might have to do with the language to describe those social practices. Jen referred to this a couple of weeks ago, but we're a select group of people who are kind of academically oriented and read books by Davidson and Wilson. And these kinds of concepts are not easy to communicate to a lot of people in practices. So I see my burden is kind of making this easier to apply in actual domains with technology. That's one side of it. And as I mentioned, I created a cryptographic protocol for enabling better communication of values and building trust and things of that sort. So I'm going to be continuing developing that and embedding prosocial within that. But on the other hand, this is going to come along. On the other side, I've also mentioned that I become a hypnotherapist recently, and I'm going to be doing guided hypnotherapy sessions, group hypnotherapy, where I use the act matrix because I've been using it with individuals and it's been really helpful for me in my practice. It's a really great tool to get people into hypnosis actually, and so I thought that it had a lot of potential. Actually, a lot of the material from the first half of the course I feel can be enhanced by incorporating hypnosis and getting the subconscious on board with the prosocial process. So that's something I'd like to explore a lot. I'm going to be openly offering hypnosis sessions with some prosocial stuff. So that's all from me. But it's been really, really cool meeting and talking about some things.
Mhm.
Do you pass it on?
That's who's left.
Yes. Gosh, it's just sort of like I worked with a large community for many years trying to do, pro-social from a number of different perspectives. And I think this whole conversation, which is so rich and has so many good, committed people, I think because I walked away not really knowing the impact I'd had, but of course, we are dealing with complex dynamic system and we give our best to that system and we don't know what that system's going to do with it. And we don't know what will be the outcome, if any. And it's really hard. Like the world doesn't work that you get direct feedback like, oh, Pip, that was perfect. You've solved our problem or you've helped solve our problem. It's just not like that, is it? There's just so many things going on in these group complex situations. So I think it's just made me kind of feel it's okay to do our best and to just open arms, wonder what might happen next, or wonder what we can do next, one step at a time with open compassion. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Might pass that to Robert.
Thanks, Pip. Yeah, it's these journeys are always amazing, aren't they? I For me, my learning edge is I think we've all touched on it. I'm really intrigued by how our quality of presence can actually shape a context. And what does it mean to actually be able to compose yourself and be present with real authenticity and um and feel it all really well for what it is, rather than struggling to try and avoid pain and that kind of thing. And so that's one facet. But the other facet for me, which I'll touch on in a minute, is the kind of journeying with Annika, and with Pip and Andrea as facilitating the course. But Pacifica, when you spoke, you reminded me of an experience I had that I wanted to share as well, where it's kind of indicative of this. I mean, quite a few years ago now, I worked with a group of young adults who were very interested in trying to work together to realize social change. And amongst this group, there was this Japanese girl. She was about mid-20s, like mid to late 20s. And I was with this group for a week. It was an intense period. And throughout the course of this conversation, it became apparent that she said that she was her mother was a concubine, that she and her brother knew that their father had a wife and kids, and that they were visited every second weekend. And she just grew up with this lived experience that I'm unlovable. And no matter what she told herself rationally, she said she could not void herself of this feeling. It kind of reminds me a bit, what Jen and Lucy, when you were speaking as well. And when she told her story, you could feel it, She said, I just, nothing, it's always there. I cannot, it's just, I embody it. And anyway, over the course of a few days, she told facets of her story. And, and that, along with some of the stories of the kind of formative experiences of these other youth, was contrasted with me inviting them to speak about the days when they felt most alive. Anyway, this young Japanese girl, she spoke about a day when she was with her best friend at school, and when she was about 12, and they packed a picnic lunch together, and they climbed a hill, and they sat on this hill, beautiful weather, and made art all day. They just loved making art. And when she finished telling her story, I asked her, so what was so special about that day? And she just burst into tears, and she said, it's actually because I did know my friend loved me for who I was. And then this metaphor just popped into my head. And I said to her, it sounds like you've got these all these chapters in your life, It's like you've got this bookcase of memories. And down the bottom of your bookcase, you've got this safe, and you keep trying to lock away the story about how unlovable we are in this safe every morning and every night. But the busts open the safe and goes whap and throws itself into your face. And you just keep looking at the world through this story, and you're kind of struggling with it and trying to jam it back into the safe. And she said, that's it. That's exactly what's going on. And I said to her, so what would happen if you didn't do that? You actually gave that chapter in your life a beautiful leather cover and you painted a lovely picture on it and gave it big gold writing that said something like everything that I know about love because I am an artist of love. So joining the two stories together. And so when this book opens itself to you, just let it teach you another lesson. Because I said to her, I think you know more about love than any of us here because of what you've been through. And then just let it float very gently back to the top shelf of your bookcase because it's the most important story in your life. And then just escort yourself back to being an artist of love in word and deed, which you are. I said, do you think you can do that? He said, oh, I think so. Like it was, all of us were in tears. I mean, some of the stories that were exchanged were very powerful. And the amazing thing was that I was at another event a year later, and unbeknown to her, she came to that same event. She was from Perth, which is right across the other side of Australia, and she was back in Canberra. And she saw me. She came rushing up to me and she said, do you know what happened? After my week with you, I went back home. I resigned my job in the public service and I went back to college and I'm now teaching children how in preschool how to make art. And I found a guy and he's proposed to me and we're going to get married. And she looked completely different. When I first met her, she was unkept. She was very shy, whereas she was just really present in a very utterly natural and beautiful way. The shift was amazing. And and to me, that's what I keep learning, on these journeys. Like this shift, it's huge, and we don't just make it once. Somehow I think we've subscribed to the fact that not only maybe are we unlovable, that people aren't capable of love anymore. But I know we are. And I keep being reminded of that over and over. And it's been so beautiful journeying with you, Annika, and finishing these sessions and inviting you to sit in silence and just ask yourself the question, so how do I love the way in which I showed up? And I've noticed this beautiful shift from you initially focusing on what you need to change to improve yourself. Whereas there's a quality of presence you've got, Annika, that is like that, for me. It's beautiful. And maybe you didn't notice it because that's just who you are. Yeah. So yeah. Andrea, how about you?
I'll make it short because we're running out of time. Just want to say that I was going through a lot of self-awareness. It's been a while since I'm not in an international group. I've been in my comfort zone here in Mexico and in Colombia teaching in Spanish. So I um, I can see my us versus them behavior a little bit at the beginning, and I was like, oh my God, a little bit intimidated. But through the weeks, I just kind of went back to our common humanity and how we can all share from what we are from our similarities more than our differences. And I'm so inspired by Annika because I can totally put myself in your shoes. You're teaching in your second language. So it's just what I was going through times 20 because you are the facilitator. So I'm so proud of you. You did such an amazing job, Annika. Thank you so much. It really inspired me. I was able to connect with all of you. I enjoyed knowing you, knowing your stories. I also was kind of keeping an eye on the modality. I usually teach courses that have a lot more content. So I love the fact that we have a platform and we come to just kind of share and deepen the understanding. So I was keeping an eye on that as well. And just I live with quality of presence that resonates a lot with me lately in the things that I teach my students as well. Just kind of keeping an eye on the quality of my own presence is important and going meta. So Robert was teaching us that how we need to go meta with these courses and kind of have that higher perspective and analysis of what we do. So I enjoyed the course a lot, and I learned a lot. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And now we did sort of a listening circle. And for me, this was so beautiful to hear from all of you how this journey was for you and what you up to do with what you took from this course and how it also changed you. And I really loved being on the journey with you. And as so often, we planned for more, and I decided to go more into the discussion because I think that was really worth it. So there are two bits which we are falling short, and I will just do a quick notice. So one is feedback for us as for Prosocial and for us as facilitators. There is a feedback questionnaire on the Learn Worlds platform, and we'd love if you could fill it in and give it back to us. That would be great. And there was a suggestion. I will put it in the chat, and I find it super interesting. And it was David's suggestion to tap into another kind of feedback that is more that gets more the individual feedback from each person, and which is maybe more valuable compared to the standard feedback. Oh, the course was great, or so much more open questions. And if you find the time to do that, what is suggested in the chat, and you will always also find it in the conversation on Learn Worlds. It was posted yesterday by David. Then we would be so happy if you could leave us a post there answering this. It would be terrific, because that gives us some learning. And now I come to the last short point, and I know we are over time. And this concerns how you, if at all, plan to connect as a group. And some groups decide to do this via a chat like WhatsApp or Signal or whatever messenger you want to use. Or I don't know what is up on Hilo at the moment, because this is not yet decided, I guess. Is that true, Robert? Yeah. So now would be the time. Yeah.
I just
Go
say
ahead.
stay tuned on that front. So everyone will receive an email about connecting again on Hilo.
Yeah. So yeah, you could exchange like via the I think the chat and Learnwords, you could exchange your contacts and then form a group. Or right now put it in the chat and exchange it. That would be one another possibility. Is there any quick opinion of the group about that? Or you sort it out on Learn Worlds? So I would leave it with that. Yeah. And for closing, I'd like to do, yes, please, Robert.
I just, if you think it's appropriate, I mean, what's come to my mind is a piece of music that a friend of mine in Hobart wrote, a song. So if that fits with your closing, we can leave listening to some and watching a bit of music.
I wanted to do something else.
Please go ahead.
And this is something I did in the last course when I was facilitating with my sister, and she's actually facilitating the other cohort right now. And this is something which comes from playback theater, and it's called a fluid. And I would propose that we do that. And it's a non-verbal interaction, and we end up with a common sculpture. So I'd ask you to go in front of your Zoom screen, like go a little bit back so that you big parts of your body can be seen. So I might so like this.
I'm not wearing any pants. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, and this is non-verbal, so I will start and making a gesture to be part of the sculpture, and then somebody else follows, but it's only one person at the time, so we end up with a common sculpture. Okay, any questions? Or is that clear? So I start.
I'm not sure what I'm doing. Are we doing the same thing?
Mm-mm. Whatever you feel like. Great. And now we end up and put the hands to the end of your space. So we're holding hands.
I need to, yeah.
Yes, that's great. So good. Thank you. So thank you all. And yeah, I hope very much to see you in whatever other context this might be. And it was a great journey for me. So
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. Really, thank you.
Bye.
This was amazing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.